NewsRadio, titled Sleepless, dives into the unraveling sanity of the WNYX crew when a simple overnight work situation spirals into a surreal, exhausting, and oddly revealing experience that strips everyone down to their most unfiltered selves. Beginning with Dave Nelson announcing that due to a last-minute technical overhaul of the station systems, they all have to stay overnight to monitor equipment, ensure a smooth transition, and be available in case anything goes wrong, which initially sounds manageable until it becomes clear that none of them are psychologically equipped to function without their usual routines. And as the night sets in, the fluorescent-lit office transforms into a strange liminal space where time feels distorted and small irritations become massive conflicts, with Bill McNeil immediately treating the overnight stay as a personal inconvenience bordering on a human rights violation, dramatically lamenting the loss of his beauty sleep and attempting to commandeer the most comfortable furniture for himself, while Lisa Miller tries to maintain a sense of order and professionalism by organizing shifts and suggesting structured tasks, only to find that her authority weakens as fatigue creeps in and no one takes her seriously, especially Joe Garelli, who becomes increasingly energized by the chaos of nighttime, viewing the whole situation as an opportunity to experiment with bizarre mechanical ideas and philosophical tangents about how society is just a construct that dissolves after midnight, and Matthew, predictably, struggles the most, oscillating between hyperactivity and near collapse as he tries to stay useful but repeatedly messes up even the simplest instructions, like monitoring a blinking console light that he either ignores completely or stares at with obsessive intensity as if it might reveal the secrets of the universe. And as hours pass, the group's dynamics begin to shift in subtle but fascinating ways, with Dave initially trying to keep everyone on task, but slowly losing his grip as exhaustion erodes his patience and decision-making, leading him to overreact to minor issues like misplaced cables or slightly off audio levels, turning them into crises that only add to the tension, while Catherine Duke remains the most composed on the surface, observing the unraveling with her usual sharp wit, but even she cannot fully escape the creeping absurdity, eventually engaging in increasingly sarcastic commentary that borders on existential reflection about why any of them are even there in the first place, and the episode cleverly uses the confined setting and lack of sleep to blur the line between reality and perception. As conversations become more disjointed, jokes linger too long, and moments of silence feel loaded with strange significance, with one particularly memorable stretch involving Bill attempting to deliver an impromptu late-night broadcast that devolves into a rambling, self-indulgent monologue about fame, identity, and the cruelty of the entertainment industry, which somehow captivates listeners who call in not to complain but to encourage him, reinforcing his delusion that he is producing groundbreaking radio when in reality he is just tired and unfiltered. And Lisa, desperate to regain control, tries to redirect the broadcast into something coherent but ends up getting pulled into the same strange rhythm, her normally sharp and focused demeanor slipping into something more candid and vulnerable as she admits on air that she sometimes feels invisible, despite her competence. A moment that briefly grounds the episode in emotional truth before Joe hijacks the equipment again to test a theory about how certain frequencies might influence human mood, resulting in a bizarre soundscape that oscillates between soothing and unsettling, leaving everyone unsure whether they are becoming calmer or just more disoriented, and Dave, caught between wanting to shut everything down and fearing the consequences of failure, becomes increasingly erratic, pacing, second-guessing himself, and even attempting to nap in short bursts that only make him more irritable when he wakes up, while Matthew reaches a point of near delirium where he starts confessing minor mistakes from his past, treating them as if they are major crimes, including losing office supplies and forgetting messages, which prompts Catherine to dryly suggest that if those are his worst sins, he is doing better than most people. a line that lands with unexpected warmth amid the chaos, and as the night deepens into the early morning hours, the group begins to experience a strange sense of camaraderie born out of shared exhaustion. Their usual conflicts softening into something more cooperative, with Bill offering Lisa his jacket when she shivers, Joe actually listening to Dave's instructions for once, and Matthew managing to complete a task correctly, prompting genuine, if tired, praise from the others. And it is in this fragile, half-lucid state that the episode finds its emotional core, suggesting that beneath their dysfunction, they are capable of supporting one another when stripped of ego and routine. Yet, this moment of unity is fleeting, because as dawn approaches and the technical work is finally completed, reality starts to reassert itself, bringing back their usual habits and tensions, with Dave regaining his authoritative tone, Lisa snapping back into efficiency, Bill reclaiming his arrogance, Joe returning to his eccentric detachment, and Matthew slipping back into anxious uncertainty. As if the night's strange honesty was just a temporary glitch in their personalities. And the final act underscores this return to normalcy with a mix of humor and subtle melancholy as they prepare to leave the station. Physically drained but oddly accomplished, reflecting briefly on the experience in ways that reveal how differently each of them processed it, with Dave focusing on the success of the operation, Lisa on the lessons learned about leadership, Bill on the artistic breakthrough of his broadcast, Joe on the potential for future experiments, and Matthew simply relieved that he did not completely ruin everything. And yet there is an unspoken acknowledgement that something meaningful happened during those sleepless hours, even if none of them can fully articulate it, and the episode closes with a quiet, almost understated moment of transition as the morning crew arrives, unaware of the night's chaos, and the main characters file out into the daylight, blinking and disoriented, their shared experience already beginning to feel like a dream, reinforcing the episode's central theme that extreme situations can temporarily reveal deeper truths about people, but sustaining that level of honesty in everyday life is far more difficult, making Sleepless both a comedic exploration of fatigue-induced madness and a surprisingly introspective look at how environment and circumstance shape behavior, all wrapped in the fast-paced, character-driven humor that defines the series, leaving viewers with the sense that while the night may be over, the underlying dynamics of WNYX remain as unpredictable and compelling as ever, ready to spiral into the next absurd situation at any moment. And even after they step out into the daylight and attempt to reset themselves back into something resembling normal human functioning, the lingering effects of the sleepless night refuse to disappear so easily, because exhaustion has a way of exposing cracks that don't immediately seal back up. And as they drift back into their routines over the following hours, there is a subtle but noticeable dissonance in how each of them carries themselves, with Dave trying perhaps a little too hard to assert control, overcompensating with stricter instructions and tighter scheduling as if to prove that he never truly lost grip in the first place. Yet his slightly delayed reactions and occasional zoning out betray that he is still running on fumes, while Lisa, although outwardly sharp and composed again, seems more introspective than usual, pausing mid-task as if replaying fragments of the night in her head, particularly the moment she allowed herself to be vulnerable on air. And though she quickly buries that version of herself under her usual professionalism, there is a faint shift in how she engages with the others, just a bit more aware, a bit less dismissive, as if she now recognizes that everyone around her is carrying something equally fragile beneath their surface quirks, and Bill, of course, refuses to acknowledge any weakness at all, loudly declaring that he functions better without sleep and that the entire experience has elevated his performance to a new artistic level. Yet he repeatedly forgets what he is saying mid-sentence and becomes irrationally defensive when anyone questions his recollection of events, suggesting that his ego is working overtime to mask how disoriented he still feels, while Joe, interestingly, seems the least affected in a conventional sense, slipping back into his eccentric rhythm with ease but now occasionally referencing the night in cryptic ways. hinting that he found some deeper meaning in the chaos that no one else quite understands, and Matthew, perhaps the most transparently impacted, moves through the office with a mixture of pride and lingering anxiety. Proud that he managed to survive the ordeal without catastrophic failure, but anxious that he might not be able to replicate that success again, leading him to double-check everything to an almost obsessive degree, which both helps and hinders the workflow, and Catherine, ever perceptive, watches all of this unfold with a knowing expression, making occasional comments that cut through the posturing and reveal the underlying truth that none of them are entirely unchanged by what happened, even if they pretend otherwise. And as the day progresses, the episode subtly weaves in callbacks to the night's events, with small misunderstandings and minor conflicts echoing the larger chaos they experienced, creating a sense of continuity that reinforces how thin the line is between order and disorder in their workplace. And in one particularly telling moment, Dave attempts to hold a brief meeting to debrief the overnight situation, framing it as a professional evaluation, but it quickly devolves into overlapping conversations, contradictory accounts, and Bill's exaggerated storytelling, until Dave realizes that any attempt to impose a clear narrative on what happened is futile, because each of them experienced it differently, and perhaps that is the point. That their shared environment does not produce a single cohesive reality, but rather a collection of overlapping perspectives that only occasionally align, and this realization, though subtle, marks a small but meaningful shift in Dave's approach, as he momentarily relaxes his need to control every detail and instead allows the conversation to flow, resulting in a rare instance where the group feels less like a collection of problems to be managed and more like a team navigating unpredictability together. Yet true to the show's tone, this moment of near insight is quickly undercut by something absurd, such as Joe accidentally triggering a minor technical glitch or Matthew misinterpreting an instruction in a way that sends everyone scrambling again, snapping them back into their familiar patterns and reminding the audience that while growth may occur, it is never linear or permanent in this world. And as the episode continues to stretch toward its extended narrative, it deepens its exploration of how sleep deprivation acts not just as a physical challenge, but as a catalyst for emotional exposure, forcing characters to confront aspects of themselves they would normally keep hidden. And although those revelations are partially obscured once normalcy returns, they leave behind traces that influence behavior in subtle ways, shaping interactions and decisions even when unacknowledged. And by the time the story reaches its later stages, there is a quiet sense that the sleepless night has become one of those defining shared experiences that will be referenced, exaggerated, and reinterpreted in future moments, a kind of internal mythology for the group that strengthens their bond even as it highlights their differences. And in this way, the episode extends beyond its immediate comedic premise to offer a nuanced look at how extreme circumstances can temporarily dissolve the barriers people maintain, revealing a more honest, if chaotic, version of themselves, only for those barriers to reassemble in slightly altered forms once the moment passes, leaving behind a complex blend of connection, denial, and lingering self-awareness that continues to ripple through their interactions long after the night itself has ended.